Welcome to Big Roofs. Wait, what episode is this? It's like episode
Five.
five?
Five.
Episode five. Already episode five. Man, we've been flying through these episodes. So, yeah, welcome to Big Roofs episode five, the podcast where we talk about roofing and other stuff as well. Let's get started. John, what is the funniest thing you've seen this week?
Oh yeah, that's the story I'm remembering now. Okay, so this guy, I was like, "What are you talking about?" This guy, I think I'm paraphrasing. This guy who owned a fence company. I'm probably gonna get all this wrong, but I'm
What is
pretty
his
sure.
name?
I don't. It doesn't even matter. I don't want to even throw him under the bus.
Okay.
But there's just imagine if you're listening to this. There's a guy in an orange jumpsuit taking his picture because he got caught doing this, which is very funny to me. And a lot of people thought this was funny, and it's not good. It's horrible. It's not. It's a very serious thing, but it was still. You'll see why. All right, so he is a small time fence contractor. He built fences for people, and he pretended to go into he went into a competitor's office and pretended to need employment. And he, after they said, no, we don't need you at all, and they didn't know who he was, he's like, hey, my cell phone's broken. Can I use your phone real quick? So he picked up their cord. They're like, yeah, sure, you can use my phone. And he takes their cordless phone and hits a few buttons on it, and then just somehow nonchalantly just walked out. And weeks went by, and they figured out. This shows you how little people call the office number, how no employees call it, no one calls it. Weeks went by, and he had forwarded all of those phone calls to his office, to his cell phone. So he was getting all these leads for weeks and weeks and weeks. And he got, I think his bond is like $300,000. I forgot the actual
Wow.
judgment and verdict, but it was a funny thing. And a lot of people were really upset. Some people were like, I can't even believe that happened. He walked in, stole their leads for weeks. And I just made a comment of like the Ron Burgundy, I'm not even mad, I'm impressed. And a lot of people thought that was funny too. I still think it's very funny, but it's not
It's
good.
crazy.
I do not condone this, but it was
What was
truly
the
like,
charge? Was it like hacking, phone hacking
mm,
or something?
I didn't really, that details, I know they matter, but I just saw his face in the jumpsuit, and I read the brief synopsis of the story, but that's pretty much it. It was funny. It's very funny that
That's
he went into a competitor's office and forwarded all the phone calls to his office. That's just crazy.
That is wild. Yeah, that's impressive. But also terrible, but impressive. You're right. That is impressive.
Yep.
Like what creativity. I mean, wow. That's crazy.
I
Well,
can't imagine
anyway,
doing it, but he did it.
cool. Well, I was trying to think of a story to share. I don't really have anything great. I did see there was a meme I saw that I laughed at. It was so there's the whole Israel Palestine thing, and someone had tried to write free Palestine in their Twitter bio, but that they'd actually written free Palpatine, like from Star Wars.
It was
It was
actually very
dumb.
funny.
It was dumb, but it was funny. I laughed. I laughed.
Very
But
true.
all right. Well, let's jump into it. I have something specific that I want to talk about today. But I think we can talk about this in a lot of different contexts. But I want to talk about raising money, specifically around vendors for the roofing space. And so, there's a lot of chatter about this company raised this amount of money, that company raised this amount of money. And I think there's some myths, and I've had some conversations recently, and I think there's just some misunderstandings about what it means when a software vendor, specifically software, because I'm ProLine software, so let's talk about software vendors, specifically when a software vendor raises capital from either VCs or private equity. And I think one of the myths is, oh, they just raised $20 million. That means they're going to be able to build the best product, right? That's one of the biggest myths. Now, I will say, they raised $20 million. They potentially could build the best product. They might have the most resources to build the best product. But here's the catch. They're not going to. And the reason that they're not going to is because when you raise lots of capital from either VCs or private equity, the incentive structure of the business completely changes, because it changes from, oh, we're trying to build the best product to serve our customers, to we have to get a return for those investors. We just pulled in $20 million. We got to give them back hundreds of millions of dollars. That's why the investors are investing that money. And how do you get that money back out of the business? It's not by building product. It's through marketing. So the only thing, not the only thing, but most of that money, when a company is like, oh, we raised $20 million, 90% of that money is going towards marketing. I don't want to put exact numbers. It's maybe not 90%, but a vast majority of that money is going towards marketing. So when you hear, oh, a company just raised $20 million, it doesn't mean that they're a bad company, right? I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying that they couldn't build a great product, but what you're going to get with that company is a company that is strongly incentivized to grow as quickly as possible. And so when you go and you talk to them, you are just a number. You're not important to them, because they need you, but they also need hundreds or thousands of other roofers at the same time. And so what you get is you get companies that are putting out marketing that is very pretty, that looks very fancy and says things like, oh, the all-in-one tool for roofing contractors, all in one place. But then when you actually do the demo or you sign up with them, you realize, oh yeah, it's all in one except for calendar functionality, text messaging, like all of these different features that are critical for running your business, like
or
phone,
it doesn't even work. It doesn't even work.
Barely even works to begin with. Yeah, because they're the way the investors, they're putting $20 million in, but they're telling the founders, hey, spend as little money as possible on the product. Get the product just barely to the point where it's workable and it's sellable, and then like put the rest of that money into marketing. That is the standing orders of every VC or a private equity investor, because that is how these companies are structured. So that's the biggest myth there. And then the other thing too is, like, people are like, oh, they just raised $20 million. They're going to be around. Like, they raised $20 million. They're not going to go out of business. Can't go out of business. That is the exact opposite. Bootstrapped companies are typically much more stable companies, because they're based around actually making enough money to cover their expenses and at least breaking even, if not being profitable. Whereas a VC or a private equity backed startup, they are constantly running in a deficit, because they have all these people they've hired, all this massive staff and expense that they have to pay for. And so if they don't reach their milestones that the investors have laid out in order to raise that next round of funding, they're out of business, or they're going to have to completely strip everything and break all their promises to customers. So it's an extremely dangerous, actually much less stable business when they raise all that money than it is if they stay bootstrapped. So that's a big myth, is like that it's a more stable business. And then I think the third myth is that you're going to get better customer support from this well-funded company than you're going to get from a bootstrap company. And that's maybe not less of a myth, but people don't quite understand. I think the biggest thing that I've seen is these funded companies will say things like free onboarding. You just come to us, we're going to set you up and everything's free. It's not actually free. What's happening is the VCs and the private equity people are covering that cost in the short run to get your business. But the person that does that onboarding is someone that probably watched a PowerPoint presentation, has no idea how your business is run. They have no idea how that software works. They probably watched a PowerPoint presentation last week, because they're going to hire all these people super fast to do all this free onboarding work. So yeah, maybe it's free, right? Whereas the bootstrap company like ProLine does have to charge for our time, all the time and effort, work that puts into onboarding you. But with the funded VC funded startup, you're a number, and they're just putting you through that system as quickly as possible, because they got to hit those milestones to raise that next round of funding. Right. And I don't want to say that they can't be a great company. I'm not talking about anyone specific. It's just that there are companies out there that have raised funding. I'm not saying that they can't be great companies, because they can. It's just that the incentive structure when you raise that kind of funding is so warped, especially when it's early on. Now, if the product was great, if a software company has the perfect product and they just want to raise money for marketing, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to change that much. But when it's early on in the business, before the product is really completed, and they're raising that kind of money, that's a huge red flag. And it's really dangerous for the company, and it's a really dangerous thing for the customers that are trusting that company. Sorry, I just went on a long rant there.
No, it's true. So when from my perspective, I think about a couple different things. I've had a lot of conversations this week about private equity and roofing companies and like taking over. And like, just to give you an example, Perimeter Roofing is bought 3 other different companies. And one of the sales reps from one of the companies has been texting me and asking about my opinion on it and what I've seen in the industry. And it ties to exactly what you're talking about with software companies or just vendors for roofing space like ProLine. And what that means. You need to think of this as what is the intent of the company now. So exactly what you're saying is true. Our focus at ProLine is our customer. Our customer is our focus. There is no other focus. We want to grow. We want that to grow into a large company. That is our focus as well. But we can't do that because we have no extra money just lying around for marketing. We have to make sure that every one of our customers has an excellent experience and they have a great return on investment.
And it's all about the product. That's the actual thing that people get. It's like, ironically, the well-funded startup has all this money that they could spend on product, but they don't because the incentive structure is not. Whereas with the bootstrap company like ProLine, our whole thing is the product. That's it. The only thing that we're selling on, that we can sell on, that we can compete with, other well-funded companies, is the product. So we're in a position where our only choice is to build the product to be as good as possible. And I mean, one big thing is like with funded startups, usually the founders are money people, they're business people. Whereas with us, it's like you're a roofer, like you know the space intimately, and I'm a developer. I'm building like 80 to 90% of what makes up ProLine was built by me personally. And that's completely different than these companies where they're raising a bunch of money. Their founders are not building the tech. They're outsourcing it to some agency, maybe even an agency over in India that has no understanding of roofing, no passion, no desire to help roofers. And that does show through in the product. If nothing else, just the speed at which the product gets built. But ultimately, it's just like when the person that's building it, with the people that building it don't know or understand the roofing business, it shows through in the product. You can't get around that.
Yep. And again, going back to intent. If there's a problem or a benefit to what ProLine does to my roofing business, you get instant feedback and are able to adjust the product in the correct way. You either fix a problem or you make a feature that's very beneficial for me. It's invaluable. Nobody else in our space has that direct connection to. I get on roofs and sell roofs, and I talk to customers and I talk to roofing crews all the time, and our team works together. And we have problems and we want solutions. That's a really, really important thing, not to toot our own horn, but no one else has that. And you're never going to have that unless somebody else essentially copied our process for creating ProLine. Going back to intent one more time. We don't have anyone who's telling us you have to sell X number of companies this month, or we're going to, there's going to be consequences, or this year or this quarter. We don't have any of that. Our focus and our intent is that every single contractor that reaches out to us has a positive experience and is a good fit for us. Like we're not going to work with somebody who's not a good fit. If you're not a good fit, you're not a good fit. But other companies that have numbers that they have to hit are just going to push that product forward.
Tell you whatever they have to tell you to get you in.
Yep. And you're going to migrate all that stuff over. It's going to be a headache to do, and no one's going to have a good process. And then you're going to be upset because your roofing business, the thing that provides your living for yourself, is in peril now because a really well-marketed company pushed their product on you. It's really, really important. I mean, in any type of investment situation, I know a lot of people have talked about this specifically about roofing companies, but it's the same process. We can kind of tangent off of that. Like, the owners of these companies are going to benefit if everything goes well, perfectly, and there's no big problems for these ones that are getting rolled up in these big private equity deals. It's a similar situation. The owners will win, and the co-founders of these software companies will win, but everybody else will lose. It's just a matter of time. Statistically, look at Shark Tank, all the investments there, by far the majority of them fail horribly, miserably. It's not about like who has the most money and who gets the best investments. It's about product fit and intent behind that company and the founders of that company.
It's so crazy, the numbers. Like I've done so much research on this because we've tried to raise funding before we kind of understood it. And it's there's the failure rate of funded startups is way higher than bootstrap startups, like way higher, specifically because the investors put those incentive structures in place where they're trying to grow way faster than they should be. It's not sustainable. Now, and just to be clear, like we have some friends and family investors, and we may take on some like angel investors and stuff of that nature. That's a completely different type of thing. It's like small private investors where it's not really changing the incentive structure, especially people that may be related to the industry and want to see, better software for roofers and stuff like that. But these big deals, VC backed deals, like I said, it's not necessarily going to make them a bad company, but it's going to be very hard for them not to become a company that screws over their customers.
Yep. So if you're a contractor listening to this, what's in it for you? Like why does this matter to you? You need to choose a company. If you're going to, especially CRM, it's the platform for your business. It's the whole thing. You got to do a bunch of work on the front end to make sure it's all set up for your company. It matters because we're trying to kind of expose what the reality of the situation is that there's a lot of platforms that have been out for years and years and years, and they have failed, and no one really talks about it that much. But if you choose a company that is bootstrapped, we have all the incentive to stay solvent. We don't have a big bill to pay every month. We don't have those crazy stressors in our life that makes us want to quit. We are very happy with where we're at. We love helping contractors, and we love the product that we've developed, and we'll continue to develop. We're going to continue to listen to the roofing industry. We're going to add those features, add those things that people need for their business. And you're going to get instant feedback, especially in this early phase when we are just a few years old. It's just going to get better and better and better. And you're going to, the people that use us right now, we really listen to them. We really do change the product for their benefit.
Speaking of, so I just did that pro school for our invoice templates, and Brian Huff had some great feedback. So I didn't realize this, and maybe you were doing this, but he was actually using the budgeting tab before he sold the job, like to try to anticipate like what his profit would be on a job, which is interesting. And I mean, I'd always thought that you just put that into your quote and then that would be that. But I do. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. And he wasn't explicitly asking for this, but he was just like, hey, I kind of want an area that I can sort of workshop the project before we actually start spending money, like rather than waiting to the very end of the job. Because it's the sum of payments in that budget tab, like it truly, you have to wait to the end. You have to wait till you actually collect payments to see how that budget breaks down. So kind of what him and I were talking back and forth about is like, what if we added at least one, like split it into multiple tabs and added at least one more tab where you have the post-job budget that's the sum of payments and breaks down some of actual revenue, and then having a pre-job tab where it's the same budget, right? But it's different, it's separate. So you have a different number at the top, and you have more of like a place where you can sort of plan out budget wise before the job takes place, and then you can compare the two. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I use it the same way as Brian did. So I use that pre-job budget. It's really important. It's even more, I mean, most people use subcontractors, so you have a pretty fixed labor budget. You understand what labor is going to cost. But anywhere out west, Oregon, Washington, California, they have to plan man hours. It's just more complicated, and you can't really just have a solid number in the labor category. You have to try to plan this to sell these jobs because you're having hourly labor and a number of man hours. It's just more complicated. You need that pre-job budget area to plan, to really double check your estimate to make sure that it's
going to make sense for the business.
Yeah, going to make sense for the profitability of the business.
Yeah. This is one thing I was worried. I was a little worried when it has to be the way it is in that one budget area with the payments, because there just has to be a place where that sort of goes in automatically. But it does need to be, I think we need to add, and that's actually not a hard add. I might be able to even knock that out. That's the thing. That's like what we're talking about is like, if we were a funded startup where we had this team over in India, or
Let's
maybe even
email the
US
team.
based, it's
It
like,
doesn't even
let's
matter.
email the team.
Yep.
Then the product manager has to create the scope and plan, and then it gets put in the next sprint. And like, but by the time it actually gets done and finished and deployed, we're just 2 to 3 months down the road. With us, it's like, I'm like, yeah, this is a good idea. I think it makes sense. I'm going to work on it tonight. I might have it done tomorrow. Or,
You just heard that in
worst
real
case
time,
scenario,
folks.
Monday. Yeah, well, there is the roofing process conference that will slow things down, but like, I very well might be able to knock that out tonight. It just, once I have to get in there, it's not that hard because I can duplicate essentially the code that's for the budget, duplicate it over, make it like it used to be, so it's fully editable. So I don't anticipate that being a hard add, but it could potentially make a really big impact on Brian's business, on your business, on our other customers' business that do need to have that pre-job versus post-job budget, and be able to look at both. So, yeah.
Yep. Also, the variance. We want to know the variance between the pre and post job budget.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is that something that should be tracked in like reports? Like actually have a variance?
Yeah, we want to
How is that
know
like
how
a variance? How does that track?
you'll just know the difference between what you planned and what actually happened.
Yeah.
It'll be a positive or negative quantity. Usually for us, in good situations, we plan to have a certain amount, specifically material, and we have a return. So we have a lower budget for our material. So there's a higher profit margin generally.
Gotcha. So yeah, actually that could be probably added to the post-job budget page as just a line item at the bottom, like variance.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Should on the pre-job budget, so we have numbers now that are automatically being calculated for quoted and signed revenue from quotes. Should the pre-job budget be one of those numbers, or should it be free form where you can just type in the number and kind of play around with it?
You definitely want to be able to freeform that, probably.
Okay. So the post-job budget is limited to payments. So like,
yeah, that's accurate to the,
has to be
to
accurate
the penny.
to what payments have been recorded, even if they're manually added payments. And then the pre-job budget, though, you just put in like revenue.
Yep.
And that makes sense. And it's not a hard add. So yeah, cool. Yeah, I love, this is a little window into like, this is what we do all the time. It's just like, hey, like, how is the product working? Like, this is what this customer said, John, how does this work in your business? And like, we just workshop it and we figure out what's going to work best, and then we get it done. And that's just, it's just the conversations that are happening in these well-funded startups are not this. Like, this is not what's happening. Like, those conversations, those founders, they are worried about raising their next round of funding first and foremost. Like, it's just a different way of thinking, a different way of approaching business, and it is designed to serve the investors, not the customer. Nothing wrong, and like, that's capitalism. Like, you have to have that at some point. At some point, ProLine, like, we might exit or partially exit ProLine, years down the line, right? After the product is where it needs to be, right? So it's like, things, that does happen. The problem is when it starts happening really early in a business, before the business is established, the product is laid down properly. Like, that's where it starts it just destroys businesses. Typically destroys businesses.
It's true, but the end customer always chooses, and it's because of there's a software term, stickiness of CRMs, because it's your platform and it's so painful to switch CRMs. Some other CRMs specifically get to stay around because either there's no other really there's not a really big difference between kind of the 5 major CRMs that we're seeing in the roofing space, and it's really painful to switch. So they're able to get away with it, essentially having an inferior product, or a product doesn't really help you, that you're paying for hundreds or thousands of dollars a month to have.
Yeah.
So there's like, once they get again, same kind of deal, people that raise money, they get you stuck in there. That's why investors want to invest in these types of softwares, because they know people typically don't leave because it's their whole business platform.
Yeah. So it's that they're going to spend a ton of money on marketing, get you in the door, and with an inferior product, because the investors don't want to invest in the product, and then you're stuck unless you want to go through that painful process. So yeah, it's I mean, I honestly wish the best for all of these other unnamed software companies out here raising lots of money, and CRM platforms raising lots of money and selling roofers. I wish them best, because I don't want them. I don't want those products to fail and those roofers to get screwed. I don't. But I've seen this not just in the roofing, not in the roofing space, but across all of like tech startup world, which is I'm very familiar with. And it's this cycle that repeats itself over and over and over again. And my fear is that this is happening in the roofing space. And I mean, I think it is already happening. Some of the older startups that have raised private equity and stuff, but I am afraid the cycle is repeating itself inside of this industry. So
hot take, John's hot take. Clip this. Both software companies and roofing roll-ups, they may do well for some people in certain perspectives, right? It's going to be the co-founders of companies, the founders of companies. It's going to be the owners of these roofing companies. They're all going to, if they do, everything goes well and they continue to grow, software companies, they continue to raise money, they start exiting, they win personally. Their customers don't win because the product is inferior. Same with the roofing roll-ups. The owners of these roofing companies are going to win because it's all structured so that the owners win. The sales reps, the production managers, the production crews, everyone else,
homeowners,
the homeowners, the final in product, the end customer, they're not going to get a better experience either. It's most likely just going to stay the same or make those people's lives more difficult. Mark my words. That's exactly what's going to happen in software and in the roofing roll-ups. Power to them. Everybody promoting these things are the owners because they're super pumped that they're building big things. I have no problem with people building big, huge companies at all. If that's what your passion is, do it 100%. But don't sell something to all of your minions that it's going to be different for them, because it's not. Their lives are not going to get better in the long term. Maybe in the short term, there's a little bit of a bump of lifestyle or income, but wait 3 years, wait 5 years. Those people will not be there anymore. I've seen it a bunch of times in all industries, and power to the owners for doing whatever they're going to do, but that's just not how we're going to operate. We're going to maintain a great relationship with our team and with all of our contractors. And that's the way I operate my roofing business. All my homeowners, I want them to have a great experience, and all of my team, they're A+. They're going to take care of every single homeowner. We're not just going to sell out because that's exactly what happened to me. If people offered me money, I would win, and all of my team their lives would probably get more difficult. They'd have different expectations set on them. The same way you're talking about software, the expectations would increase, and they would not benefit those team members at all. So that's what's going to happen. So anyone watching this is like, oh, no, I'm so pissed. That's because you're one of the people that are benefiting, and you're in the small group of people that are benefiting, but nobody else is going to benefit from these things at all. The homeowner specifically is going to lose long term. They're going to not have a warranty they're not going to know. All the whole list of people that used to help them are going to be gone. So
Yep. Well, we're just about out of time here. So thank you, John. Thank you for everyone that's joined us today. And we'll see you same time next week.
Bye, everybody.